What if the person you believe yourself to be is the very thing holding you back? What if your limits are not real, but learned, repeated, and protected by your own mind? Because the truth is, self-transformation doesn't begin when your life changes. It begins when you start seeing yourself clearly for the first time. Most people want to change their lives, but very few are willing to change themselves. We chase motivation, success, discipline, yet ignore the deeper force shaping everything, our unconscious patterns. You don't rise to a new life by accident. You rise when you confront what you've been avoiding. Awareness is the beginning of transformation because nothing truly changes until it is first seen clearly. Most people move through life on autopilot, guided by habits, emotional reactions, and unconscious beliefs formed long before they ever questioned them. They think they are making choices, but in reality, they are repeating patterns. Awareness interrupts this cycle. It brings light into places that were previously hidden, and in that light, illusion begins to dissolve. To become aware is to observe yourself without filters. It means noticing not just what you do, but why you do it, why you react the way you react, why certain situations trigger discomfort, anger, or fear. Awareness asks you to look beneath the surface of your behavior and confront the deeper forces driving it. This is not easy because the mind is designed to protect its current identity. It prefers familiarity over truth, even if that familiarity causes pain. When awareness begins, you start to recognize the gap between you, who you think you are, and how you actually behave. You may believe you are confident, yet notice how often you seek validation. You may see yourself as calm, yet become aware of the tension and frustration you carry beneath the surface. These realizations can feel uncomfortable, even unsettling, because they challenge the image you have built about yourself. But this discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is evidence that you are finally seeing. Awareness also reveals the patterns that repeat in your life. The same types of relationships, the same emotional cycles, the same obstacles appearing again and again. At first, it may seem like coincidence or bad luck, but deeper awareness shows that these patterns are connected to internal beliefs and unresolved experiences. What you do not consciously understand, you unconsciously recreate. By becoming aware of these patterns, you begin to reclaim control over them. There is a powerful shift that happens when you stop identifying completely with your thoughts and emotions. Instead of saying, "This is who I am," you begin to say, "This is what I am experiencing." This small change creates distance between you and your automatic responses. In that space, choice becomes possible. Without awareness, reaction is immediate and unconscious. With awareness, there is a pause, and within that pause lies the power to respond differently. Awareness is not about judging yourself or labeling parts of you as good or bad. It is about observing with honesty and curiosity. Judgment closes the door to growth, while awareness opens it. When you judge yourself, you reinforce resistance and denial. When you observe without judgment, you allow truth to emerge naturally. This creates the conditions for real transformation because you are no longer fighting yourself, you are understanding yourself. As awareness deepens, you begin to see how much of your identity is constructed. Beliefs about your abilities, your worth, and your limitations often come from past experiences or external influences rather than objective reality. You may have accepted these beliefs without question, repeating them until they felt true. Awareness challenges these assumptions. It asks you to question what you have always taken for granted and consider the possibility that you are not as limited as you once believed. This process requires courage because awareness removes the comfort of ignorance. Once you see something clearly, you cannot unsee it. The excuses that once protected you lose their power. The distractions that once kept you occupied begin to feel empty. Awareness demands responsibility because it shows you where change is needed. It places the focus back on you, not as a source of blame, but as a source of power. Through awareness, you begin to understand that transformation is not about becoming someone entirely new, but about uncovering what has been hidden beneath layers of conditioning. It is about recognizing the patterns, beliefs, and emotions that shape your reality and choosing whether to continue them or release them. Each moment of awareness is a step out of unconscious repetition and into conscious creation. As this awareness grows, it starts to influence every aspect of your life. Your decisions become more intentional. Your reactions become more measured. Your relationships become more authentic. You begin to align your actions with your deeper values rather than temporary impulses. This alignment creates a sense of clarity and direction that was not possible before because you are no longer acting blindly. The shadow must be faced, not avoided, because what you refuse to confront within yourself does not disappear. It hides, grows, and quietly controls your life from behind the scenes. The shadow is not something separate from you. It is made up of the parts of your personality that you have rejected, suppressed, or denied. These can include anger, jealousy, insecurity, fear, selfishness, or even hidden desires and strengths that you were taught were unacceptable. Over time, these rejected parts are pushed into the unconscious, where they continue to influence your thoughts, emotions, and behavior without your awareness. Avoiding the shadow may feel safe at first. It allows you to maintain a clean, controlled image of who you believe you are. You present yourself as calm, kind, confident, or rational, while anything that contradicts that identity is buried. But this avoidance comes at a cost. What is repressed does not remain silent. It finds indirect ways to express itself through sudden emotional outbursts, irrational fears, passive-aggressive behavior, or patterns that sabotage your progress. The more you deny these aspects, the more power they gain over you. Facing the shadow begins with honesty. It requires you to look at yourself without illusion and acknowledge the traits you would rather ignore. This is not about labeling yourself as flawed or broken. It is about recognizing that you are complex and that your darker aspects are just as real as your positive ones. When you admit that you are capable of anger, you begin to understand it instead of being controlled by it. When you acknowledge jealousy, you can explore what it reveals about your desires and insecurities. One of the clearest ways the shadow reveals itself is through projection. The qualities you strongly dislike in others are often reflections of something within you that you have not accepted. When someone's behavior triggers a strong emotional reaction, it is often not just about them, it is about something unresolved inside you. By paying attention to these reactions, you gain insight into your shadow. Instead of immediately judging or rejecting others, you begin to ask deeper questions about why certain traits affect you so strongly. Facing the shadow is uncomfortable because it challenges your self-image. It forces you to confront contradictions within yourself. You may see yourself as a good person, yet recognize moments of selfishness or resentment. You may believe you are strong, yet discover deep fears that influence your decisions. This discomfort is not something to escape from. It is a necessary part of growth. The shadow thrives in denial, but it loses its power when brought into awareness. There is also strength hidden within the shadow. It is not only a collection of negative traits, but also untapped potential. Qualities like assertiveness, creativity, and independence are sometimes suppressed because they were discouraged or misunderstood in the past. By facing the shadow, you do not just confront weakness, you reclaim parts of yourself that have been buried. This integration leads to a more complete and balanced identity. When the shadow is ignored, it creates inner conflict. You may feel divided, as if different parts of you are pulling in opposite directions. This tension can lead to confusion, anxiety, and a sense of being out of control. When the shadow is faced and integrated, this conflict begins to dissolve. You become more aligned within yourself because you are no longer rejecting parts of your own nature. Instead of fighting against yourself, you start working with a deeper understanding of who you are. Facing the shadow also changes the way you relate to others. As you become more aware of your own hidden traits, you develop greater empathy and less judgment. You begin to see that everyone carries their own shadow and that human behavior is often driven by unconscious forces. This awareness allows you to respond with more patience and clarity rather than reacting impulsively or defensively. The process of confronting the shadow is ongoing. It is not something you complete once and move past. New layers reveal themselves over time, especially as you grow and encounter new challenges. Each layer offers an opportunity to deepen your understanding of yourself and expand your capacity for awareness. By continuing to face what you once avoided, you gradually reduce the influence of unconscious patterns and increase your ability to act with intention and clarity. Pain is a portal, not a punishment, because it does not exist to destroy you. It exists to reveal something you have not yet understood. Most people instinctively resist pain. They avoid it, numb it, distract themselves from it, or try to escape it as quickly as possible. They see it as an obstacle, something unfair that should not be happening. But pain carries information. It signals that something within your inner world or outer life is out of alignment, and until it is acknowledged, it continues to return in different forms. When pain appears, it often disrupts your sense of control. It forces you to confront realities you would rather ignore: loss, rejection, failure, uncertainty. These experiences shake the identity you have built, exposing how fragile it can be. In this way, pain acts as a breaking point, but also as an opening. It breaks down illusions, false beliefs, and attachments that no longer serve you. What feels like destruction is often the beginning of deeper understanding. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a more transformative question is, "What is this trying to show me?" This shift in perspective changes your relationship with pain. It moves you from resistance to curiosity. Pain becomes less of an enemy and more of a guide. It points directly toward the areas of your life that need attention, healing, or change. Without it, many people would remain stuck in patterns that slowly diminish their potential. Emotional pain, in particular, reveals the hidden structures of your inner world. It exposes unmet needs, unresolved experiences, and deeply held beliefs. Feelings of rejection may uncover a dependence on external validation. Fear of failure may reveal an identity built on perfectionism. Anxiety may point to a need for control in an unpredictable world. These insights are not immediately comfortable, but they are valuable. They show you where transformation is possible. Pain also strips away distractions. When everything is going well, it is easy to remain on the surface, moving from one moment to the next without reflection. Pain interrupts this flow. It demands your attention. It slows you down and forces you to look inward. In that stillness, you begin to see yourself more clearly, your habits, your reactions, your patterns of thinking. This clarity is the doorway to change. There is a tendency to interpret pain as a sign of weakness or failure. People often believe that if they were stronger, smarter, or more capable, they would not feel this way. But pain is not a measure of your inadequacy. It is a natural response to experiences that challenge your sense of self and security. Avoiding it does not make you stronger. It only delays the process of understanding. Facing it, on the other hand, builds resilience and depth. Growth requires a certain level of discomfort because it involves stepping beyond what is familiar. The mind prefers stability, even if that stability is limiting. Pain disrupts this comfort zone. It creates pressure that pushes you to adapt, to question, and to evolve. Without that pressure, there is little motivation to change. In this sense, pain acts as a catalyst. It initiates movement where there was once stagnation. When you begin to move through pain, rather than away from it, something shifts. You start to recognize that it has layers. Beneath the immediate discomfort, there is often a deeper message waiting to be understood. By staying present with the experience instead of escaping it, you allow that message to surface. This requires patience and courage because the process is not always clear or linear. It unfolds gradually, revealing insight over time. Pain can also reconnect you with parts of yourself that have been ignored. In trying to avoid discomfort, you may have suppressed emotions, desires, or needs that did not fit your expectations or the expectations of others. Pain brings these suppressed elements back into awareness. It reminds you of what matters, what feels authentic, and what has been neglected. Through this process, you begin to realign with a more genuine version of yourself. There is a transformative quality in fully experiencing pain without immediately trying to fix or escape it. It teaches you to sit with uncertainty, to tolerate discomfort, and to trust that clarity will emerge. This capacity changes the way you approach challenges in the future. Instead of reacting with fear or avoidance, you develop a deeper sense of stability within yourself, knowing that even difficult experiences carry meaning and potential for growth. Identity is not fixed, it is fluid, constantly shaped and reshaped by your thoughts, experiences, beliefs, and choices. Yet most people move through life as if who they are has already been decided. They define themselves by past events, labels given by others, or roles they have played for so long that they feel permanent. I am this kind of person, they say, without realizing that this statement often reflects habit rather than truth. From an early age, identity begins to form through repetition. You are told who you are, what you are good at, what you lack, what is expected of you. Over time, these messages are internalized and become part of your self-concept. You begin to act in ways that confirm them, reinforcing the identity you have accepted. This creates a loop where behavior strengthens belief, and belief shapes behavior. The longer this continues, the more solid and unquestionable your identity appears. But this sense of stability is often an illusion. What you call your identity is not a fixed core, it is a pattern. It is built from memories, emotional responses, and interpretations of past experiences. Change those patterns, and your identity begins to shift. The difficulty lies in recognizing that you are not bound to the version of yourself you have been repeating. You have simply become familiar with it. One of the reasons identity feels fixed is because the mind seeks consistency. It wants to maintain a coherent sense of self, even if that self is limiting. When you try to act outside of your usual patterns, discomfort arises. You may feel like you are being inauthentic or pretending. In reality, you are stepping beyond a conditioned version of yourself. The discomfort is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are breaking away from repetition. Your identity is also influenced by the environments you place yourself in, the people around you, the expectations you absorb, and the roles you take on all shape how you see yourself. In one context, you may feel confident and capable, in another, uncertain and restricted. This variation reveals that identity is not something you carry unchanged everywhere you go. It adapts, often without your awareness, to fit the situation. Language plays a powerful role in reinforcing identity. The words you use to describe yourself, whether spoken or internal, create boundaries around what you believe is possible. Statements like, I am not disciplined, I am not creative, or I am not confident, act as limitations that guide your behavior. When these statements are repeated often enough, they begin to feel like facts rather than assumptions. Questioning them opens the possibility for change. Memory also contributes to the illusion of a fixed identity. You look back on your past and construct a narrative that explains who you are. This narrative often highlights certain experiences while ignoring others, creating a simplified version of a much more complex reality. You may define yourself by failures, successes, or specific moments that left a strong emotional impact. But these moments do not capture the entirety of who you are. They are just fragments that you have chosen consciously or unconsciously to emphasize. When you begin to see identity as fluid, a shift occurs in how you approach growth. Instead of trying to fix yourself, you start to experiment with new ways of thinking and behaving. You recognize that change is not about becoming someone else, but about expanding beyond the limits of your current patterns. This perspective allows for flexibility. You are no longer confined to a single version of yourself, but open to continuous evolution. This fluidity does not mean that you lack consistency or direction. It means that your sense of self is not rigid. You can develop new traits, let go of outdated beliefs, and respond differently to situations that once defined you. Over time, these small changes accumulate, gradually reshaping your identity. What once felt unnatural becomes familiar, and what once defined you loses its hold. As you loosen your attachment to a fixed identity, you become more adaptable. You are less driven by the need to protect a certain image and more open to learning from experience. Mistakes are no longer threats to who you are, but opportunities to refine and expand your understanding. This creates a sense of freedom because you are no longer limited by the boundaries you once believed were permanent. Inner alignment creates outer change because your external reality is not separate from your internal state, it is shaped by it. The way you think, what you believe, how you feel, and the choices you make all interact to produce the life you experience. Yet many people try to change their outer world without first examining what is happening within. They focus on results, circumstances, and outcomes while ignoring the deeper patterns that continue to recreate the same situations. Inner alignment begins when your thoughts, emotions, and actions are no longer in conflict with each other. For many, there is a disconnect. You may think one thing, feel another, and act in a completely different way. You may tell yourself you want growth, yet emotionally resist discomfort. You may desire success, yet hold beliefs that limit your sense of worth or capability. This internal contradiction creates friction, and that friction shows up in your external life as inconsistency, confusion, and repeated setbacks. When there is misalignment within, your actions lose clarity, decisions become reactive rather than intentional. You may start something with enthusiasm, only to lose direction because a deeper part of you is uncertain or resistant. This creates a pattern where effort is present, but results remain inconsistent. It is not a lack of ability that holds you back, but a lack of coherence within your inner world. Thoughts play a central role in this process. The beliefs you carry act as filters through which you interpret reality. If you believe you are not capable, you will unconsciously avoid opportunities that challenge that belief. If you believe success is out of reach, your actions will reflect hesitation and doubt. Even when opportunities appear, they may feel undeserved or intimidating. These beliefs shape your behavior in subtle ways, reinforcing the same outcomes over time. Emotions add another layer. They are not separate from your thoughts, but deeply connected to them. When your emotional state does not support your intentions, it becomes difficult to follow through. Fear can override logic. Insecurity can weaken confidence, and doubt can interrupt progress. Ignoring these emotions does not make them disappear. They continue to influence your actions beneath the surface. Inner alignment requires acknowledging these emotional responses and understanding what they reveal about your internal state. Actions are where alignment becomes visible. When your thoughts and emotions are aligned, your behavior becomes more consistent and focused. You act with clarity rather than hesitation. Decisions feel less forced because they reflect a deeper sense of direction. This does not mean the absence of challenges, but it creates a steadiness that allows you to move through them with greater resilience. There is also a shift in how you respond to external circumstances. When you are internally aligned, you are less reactive to what happens around you. You are not easily thrown off course by temporary setbacks or external opinions. Your sense of direction comes from within rather than being dictated by changing conditions. This stability influences how others perceive and interact with you, gradually shaping your environment in ways that reflect your internal state. Inner alignment is not something that happens instantly. It develops through awareness and deliberate effort. You begin by noticing where your thoughts, emotions, and actions are out of sync. You question beliefs that create limitation, allowing space for new perspectives to form. You become more attentive to your emotional responses, using them as information rather than obstacles. Over time, these adjustments bring your internal processes into greater harmony. As alignment strengthens, your external life begins to reflect it. Opportunities that once felt out of reach become more accessible because your actions support them. Relationships shift because you communicate and respond from a place of clarity rather than confusion. Goals become more attainable because your efforts are consistent and intentional. The change may not always be immediate, but it is steady and grounded in a deeper transformation. This connection between inner alignment and outer change reveals that lasting results do not come from force or control alone. They emerge from a state where your internal world supports your external actions. When your thoughts reinforce your intentions, your emotions support your direction, and your actions follow through with consistency, the gap between where you are and where you want to be begins to close.